We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 100a. And the previous summit, the Gemara said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he entices a person away from sin, so the person stays out of Gehenna. And on the previous summit, the Gemara quoted a pasuk in Eov which mentions that the entrance to Gehenna is narrow in order that the smoke stays, Besocha stays within it. And the Gemara now continues, V'shema Tomar, and maybe you will say, Keshem Shapi Otzar, just like its entrance is narrow, Kach Kula Tzara, so too the entire Gehenna is narrow. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, Hem Mikirchev, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has deepened and widened it. V'shema Tomar, and maybe you'll say, La Melech Luhuchna, maybe you'll say it's not prepared for a king. Rashi explains, La Melech Luhuchna Le Talmud, meaning for a Talmud Chacham, Shapirish Ben HaTorah, who's separated from Torah, Luhuchna Gehenna, maybe Gehenna wasn't prepared for such a person. Shelo Yehei Nidon Ba, he's not going to be judged in Gehenna. Melech Kari Le Talmud Chacham, Rashi says a Melech is a way to refer to a Talmud Chacham, T'chsib Bi Melachim Yimlochu, as it says in the pasuk, and so therefore maybe you'll say it's not prepared for a Talmud Chacham. And the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Gam hi la melech chuchan, it says that it was readied for a king. V'shema Tomar, maybe you'll say, Ein bo eitzim, that there is no wood. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Medurasa eish ve'eitzim harbe, it says its inferno has much fire and wood. V'shema Tomar, and maybe you'll say, Zehu sechara, that this is the reward. And Rashi explains, Shema Tomar Zehu sechara, maybe you will say this is the reward shel Torah of Torah, Shemat selas mi Gehenim, that it saves a person from Gehenim. Aval schar acher ein la, but maybe there's no other schar, maybe that's the only reward that one gets for learning Torah. Zehu schara, this is the reward. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'nachas shulchancha moledesh, and it says that your table will be laid with rich foods, and that's a reference to Olam Haba, and so therefore again we see that there is a reward beyond just being saved from Gehenna. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Chol Yom HaKippurim Lios B'Shabbos, if Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, so then the Lechem upon him is apportioned that night after Shabbos. And then the Mishnah goes on to say that if Yom Kippur falls on Friday, the Babylonians would eat the he-goat of Yom Kippur, they would eat it raw on Friday night. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava Bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rava Bar Barchana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo Bavliim Heim, they weren't Bavliim, they weren't really Babylonians, Ela Achasandriim Heim, rather, they were Alexandrians. Umitoch Shesonen es Bavliim, but since they hate the Babylonians, talking about the Rabbanan hate the Babylonians, so Koronosam al Shem Bavliim, so they call the Alexandrians, they call them Babylonians. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Namihachi, we have a brisa like this as well. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Lo Bavliim Heim, they weren't really Babylonians, Elach Asandriim Heim, they were really Alexandrians. Umitoch Shesonen es Bavliim, since they hated the Babylonians, Koronosan al Shem Bavliim, they called them Babylonians. Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda said to him, Tanuach daitcha shehinachta daiti, may your mind be at ease, for you have placed my mind at ease. Rabbi Yehuda was from a Babylonian family, that's why he made this comment. And the idea over here is that Rabbi Yehuda was relieved that it wasn't actually the Babylonians, those who were his neighbors, who would eat in this fashion. And Rashi explains, Umitoch shesonin chachmei Eretz Yisrael, since the chachmei Eretz Yisrael, the wise ones of Eretz Yisrael, they hated es habavliim, they hated the Babylonians, korin es Alexandriim, sha'osin minograv sonos al shem bavliim, so they refer to the Alexandrians who ate in this fashion, which is inappropriate. They called them Babylonians, Alexandriim shal Mitzrayim, Alexandria from Egypt, and Mishpachas Rabbi Yehuda mi Bavel Hoyso, the family of Rabbi Yehuda was from Bavel, Lafikach samach b'divrei Rabbi Yossi, that's why he was happy with what Rabbi Yossi had to say. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Sider es halechem b'Shabbos, if one arranged the lechem aponim on Shabbos, v'es habozichin liachar Shabbos, and the spoons with the frankincense, he arranged them after Shabbos on Sunday, v'hikder es habozichin b'Shabbos, and then he burned the bozichin on the next Shabbos, so pasul, in that case the bread is invalid. And Rashi explains, pasul, it's invalid, the mechusar zmanu, this is mechusar zman, shelo haya ala shulchan ela shisha yamim, because the frankincense now was only on the table for 6 days. It has to be at least 7 days from Shabbos till Shabbos. And here in this case, there is no solution to say, let's leave it till the next Shabbos. Since the bread was arranged properly on Shabbos, so it was sanctified by the Shulchan. So it can only be left till the first Shabbos, the Mifsal Belina. Otherwise, you have a disqualification of Lina, and therefore there is no solution in this situation. And the Mishnah continues and says, in this case where the bread was arranged on Shabbos, but the bazichin after Shabbos, ein chayav and alein mishum pigul nosar v'tamei. There's going to be no liability for pigul, nosar, and tamei. And Rashi explains mishum pigul im hiktiran al menas lechol min halechem lamachar. In this case, if one were to burn the levona with the intention of eating the bread tomorrow outside the proper time, even though normally that's a situation of pigul, here ain't no pigul. Here would not be pigul shelo karav hamatir k'mitzvaso, because the matir, which is the frankincense, was not brought properly. V'lo mishum nosar. There's also no nosar in this case. She'ein nosar chol al halechem. There's no halach of nosar on the bread. Sharei ein roy la'achila, since it's not fit to be eaten. V'tamei, and also no halach of tamei, which means ha'ochlo b'tumas haguf. Normally, if somebody eats it b'tumas haguf, there would be kares, but here ain't no kares. There ain't no bekares. There is no kares. Kedamer b'hakom, it's rabba haniter latahorim, only when it's permitted to those who are pure. So then chayav and olav misham tumah. Then there's liability for tumah. V'zelo niter latahorim me'olam. But here it's never going to be mutter to those who are pure. The bazichin have a matir in the day, because the bazichin, the spoons of frankincense, are the matir. That's the permitter. V'lo karvu kil chasan, and in this case, they were not offered properly. And the Mishnah continues, Sidr es halechem ves habozichin b'Shabbos, if he arranged the bread and the bazichin on Shabbos, v'hikter es habozichin la'achar ha-Shabbos, and then he burned the bazichin after Shabbos, psula, so then again it's disqualified, v'ein chayav and alein mishum pigul noser v'tamei, and there's no liability of pigul noser and tamei in this case. And Rashi explains, la'achar Shabbos, after Shabbos, l'mocher means to say the next day on Sunday. And here also the frankincense was burned prematurely, it was supposed to be left until the next Shabbos, and here it was just one day. And so therefore again, in this case it is disqualified, and that's why there's no pigul noser and tamei. And the Mishnah continues, Sidr es halechem ves habozichin la'achar Shabbos. Let's say both the lechem and the bazichin were arranged after Shabbos on Sunday. Again, it's supposed to be on Shabbos. V'hikter es habozichin b'Shabbos, and then he burned the bazichin on Shabbos, and again, that's too early in this situation, so psula is going to be disqualified. In this case, Ketzad Yasa, in this case, what should he do? Yanichen l'Shabbos haba, he just leaves it until the next Shabbos. Shafilu hi al hashulchan yomim ravim, even if it's on the table many days, ein bekach klum, that is not an issue. And Rashi explains, Yanichen l'Shabbos haba, he leaves it for the next Shabbos, v'yamot shavuayim al hashulchan, and it'll be 2 weeks on the table. Tekevan de lo nistar b'Shabbos, since it wasn't arranged on Shabbos, ein shulchan mekanshu at haShabbos, it actually is not sanctified until Shabbos comes. Hilkach lo mifsal belina l'matzai Shabbos. That's why there is no disqualification of lina for matzai Shabbos. And we will note over here that in our version of the Mishnah it says psula. In the case where the bazichin were burned on Shabbos, it's disqualified. And so Ketzad Yasa, the solution in that understanding would be on a situation where the bazichin were not burned on Shabbos. What should be done when everything was arranged on Sunday? If everything was arranged on Sunday, you have to wait till the next Shabbos, not that first Shabbos right after the Sunday, but the next Shabbos. However, the Masoras Hashas notes, Ayin Rashi b'Yuma Chavtes Amid Beis de Mochik Zeh. Rashi and Yuma actually erases the word psula. V'heid kach v'shem rach de lo garsinam psula. You shouldn't have the word psula. And if you take out the word psula, so in this situation, Ketzad Yasa is going immediately on this case. There is a solution in this situation. When the lechem was arranged and the bazichin were arranged on Sunday and the bazichin were burned on Shabbos, there is a solution to leave the bread, to leave that lechem l'Shabbos haba, to the next Shabbos. And the Gemara says, Tanan Hassam, we learned in a mission over there, this is a mission in Meseches Yuma, Amar Lahem Hamamuna, the administrator, would say to them, to the assembled Kohanim, Tzu'u Uru'u, Im Higias Man Shchita, go out and see if the time for Shchita, if the time for slaughtering, the morning Talmud has arrived. And Im Higi, if it did arrive, Haroa Omer Barkai, so the person who observed this, he would say Barkai, which means he would say that it's dawn. Matisya ben Shmuel, Omer Matisya ben Shmuel would say, Heyer Pnei Kol HaMizrach Ad Shebechevron, did the entire east, has it all lit up as far as Chevron? V'hu Omer Hanan, he would say yes. Now, why did they need to do this? Why did they need to make sure that it was daytime? This is talking about on Yom Kippur. Shapam Achas, because one time Olam Me'or HaLevana, one time the light of the moon came up. V'dimu Sheheyer Mizrach, and they thought that the sun had risen in the east. And Shachtu Es HaTamid, they slaughtered the carbon Tamid. V'hotziyu LeBeis HaSreifa, and then they brought it out to the Beis HaSreifa. They had to invalidate it and take it to the place of burning. And so therefore they had to ensure that the sun had indeed risen. And the Mishnah continues, V'horidu Kohen Gadol LeBeis HaTvila. Then at this point in time, once the time for the slaughtering of the carbon Tamid arrived, they took the Kohen Gadol down to the Beis HaTvila, to the mikveh. Zeh HaKlal Hoya b'Mikdash, and this is the general rule in the Beis HaMikdash. Kol HaMeseches Raglov, anyone who moves his bowels, Tohen Tvila, he requires immersion in the mikveh. V'chol HaMatil Mayim, and anybody who urinates, so Tohen Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. So then Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim time, which is sanctification of the hands and the feet, washing of the hands and the feet, is required. And so this Mishnah just stated that if they inadvertently slaughtered the carbon tamid and it was still night, so it's invalidated, and it had to be taken to the Beis HaSreifa, to the place of burning. And so the Gemara elaborates on this. Tani Avua, to Rabbi Avin, the father of Rabbi Avin, he taught a brisa as follows. Lo zu bilvan, not only in this situation, ela afilu olas ha'of shenimlaka b'layla, even an olas ha'of, a bird ola, where the malika was done at night, uminchor, a carve mincha shenikmitza b'layla, let's say the kometz was taken at night, so teitze lebeis HaSreifa, that also has to be taken out to the Beis HaSreifa, the place of burning. And the Gemara continues and asks, Bishlama olas ha'of, I understand by the bird ola, mishum delo efshel lahadura, there's no way to return it, there's no way to put things back, and so therefore, essentially it's disqualified if it was done at night. Ela mincha, but by a carbon mincha, you take the kometz at night, what's the big deal? After the mahader kometz leduchte, isn't it possible to put the kometz back to its place, back with the rest of the mincha? The kometz biyamama, and then take the kometz during the daytime. Why isn't that a solution? And the Gemara says, Hu tani la, Rabbi Avin's father, he taught the brisa. V'hu amar lan, he also explained the brisa. He stated the following: Klei shares mekadshin shalo bismanan, that klei shares, when you have service vessels in the Beis Hamikdash, they sanctify even if it's not the proper time. Therefore, once the kometz of the flour is placed in a klei shares, in a service vessel, even if that happens at night, it's not the proper time, but still it is sanctified as the kometz, and therefore it cannot be returned to the carbon mincha. And the Gemara continues, Meisri, we have a question on this from the following brisa. It says, Kol hakarev bayom kadosh bayom, anything that is offered during the day is sanctified in the kli shares during the day. And balayla, if it's at night, if it's offered at night, so then kadosh balayla, so then it is sanctified in the kli shares at night. Bein bayom uvein balayla, let's say it's something that's offered either during the day or during the night, so then kadosh bein bayom uvein balayla, so then it's going to be sanctified either during the day or during the night. And so the Gemara now continues and explains the question. It said, Kol hakarev biyom, kadosh biyom, anything that's offered during the day is sanctified during the day. And so biyom in balayla lo, isn't it saying that it's only sanctified during the day and it's not sanctified at night? And that's a question on what we just said above. And the Gemara says to that, no, it just means eino kadosh li karev. When we say it's not sanctified at night, it's not sanctified to be able to be offered. Aval kadosh li pasal, but it does become sanctified in the sense that it now can be disqualified. And the Gemara continues, most of Reb Zera asks a question based on our Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Sidr es halechem ves habazichen achar Shabbos, if he arranged the loaves and the bazichen, the loaves of the lechem aponim, and the spoons of the frankincense after Shabbos, meaning on Sunday, vehikter es habazichen, and then burned the bazichen b'Shabbos on Shabbos, psula, so it's possible it is disqualified. Ketzad yasa, what should he do? Yanichena l'Shabbos haba, he should leave it till the next Shabbos. Sha'afilu hi ala shulchan yomim rabim, even if it's on the shulchan many days, ein bekach klum, that is not an issue. And the question is as follows: Visalka daitach, if it should enter your mind, klisharis mekadjin shalo bismanon, that klisharis are able to sanctify even not in the proper time, so then likdosh v'lifsol, why over here is it not sanctified in order to be disqualified? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Man de kamosiv shaper kamosiv, the one asking the question is asking a good question. However, Avuad Rabbi Avinami, the father of Rabbi Avin also, who brought the brisa, Masnisa Kamer, he's bringing a brisa, it's not his own opinion, so we have to answer this contradiction. And the answer is as follows: Kasavar, the Tana of the Brisa holds, Laila ain't mechusar zman, that Laila is not considered mechusar zman. It's not considered to be premature. That's why it's able to be sanctified at night. But hayamim, but if it's by days, if it's on the wrong day, so mechusar in zman. So then that's considered to be premature. The Gemara says sof, but in the end, and Rashi explains, Kasavar Tana de Rabbi Avin, the Tana de Rabbi Avin, he holds Laila ain't mechusar zman, that night is not mechusar zman. The halayla holech achar yom, the night follows the day. Hilkach mekadosh le klisharis lekometz, therefore the kometz is sanctified by the klisharis at night. The zmanu would still consider the time. Elashein avodas laila ksher, it's just that avoda done at night is not kosher, but again it is still sanctified, and therefore there's no way to return the kometz to the rest of the mincha. Avol yamim, but if it's days, mechusar zman, that already is mechusar zman. The yamim have a mechusar zman, again yamim is mechusar zman. Hilkach lechem anistar be'echad b'Shabbos, therefore if the bread was arranged on Sunday, lo mekadosh le lifsule, it's not going to be sanctified in order to be disqualified. Dakati kama yomim yesh atzvanu, you still have several days until the proper time, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Amud Beis.